So now we're coming to the final panel of our first day. And this is the last, but definitely not the least. We have with us, the topic itself is a dynamite topic. It's about geopolitics, world trade, and shipping. And we have with us two industry captains to discuss and debate this issue. And we have an expert moderator in the person of Nicholas Brown, Brand and Communications Director of Marine and Offshore of Bureau Veritas. So Athanasios and John, thank you very much for being with us. It's an absolutely tremendous privilege to have captains like yourself on this panel. And without any more delay, I will turn it over to Nicholas to introduce you and take over the discussion. Thank you very much again to both of you, and thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Well, Nicholas, thank you very much for organizing yet again another fantastic event. And it's wonderful to be here. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all our participants today. It's appropriate that we are in Greece on Zoom, at any rate, to talk about geopolitics, world trade, and shipping. Shipping's as old as geopolitics, and who is more important to shipping than Greek ship owners? So we're grappling with a climate emergency that's driving an energy transition. We have growing tensions between China and the United States and other countries. Questions lie elsewhere, over the role of Russia, for example. The threat of regionalization of shipping regulation has come to something of a crunch with the confirmation that the EU will involve shipping in a planned European emissions trading scheme. And for less than 9 months now, is it only 9 months? The world has been grappling with a global health pandemic. So what is happening now and what might happen next to shape the world of shipping? What is the role of the ship owner today and tomorrow? And what sort of geopolitical landscape is going to be good for our industry, good for shipping? So today we have, as Nicholas has said, two very distinguished and successful Greek principals here to talk with us about geopolitics, trade, and shipping. They need no introduction. John Hadjipateras is in New York. Good morning, John. It's still quite early for you. And Athanasios, a very good afternoon to you in Athens. My job, good morning, good afternoon. My job is simply to try and encourage you to talk. And Nicholas and Annie are insistent, let you know when, unfortunately, it will be time to stop. Of course, you can't go to a shipping conference these days without hearing that ships move 85 to 90% of everything, and that the world would stop spinning without those ships. All true, of course. Ships are the servants and enablers of world trade. And without ships, there would be very little trade, and maybe, happily, very little geopolitics. Luckily for the world, there are plenty of ships, but it does mean that we have to deal with the geopolitics. So if we start by looking at the big picture, the global landscape, world trade, trade wars and friction, the US and China, Chinese demand and production, Russian relations and a pandemic. China looms large over everything shipping related, commodity demand, exports of manufactured goods and shipbuilding. China's Hudong Chonghua shipyard last month delivered the world's largest LNG fueled ship with an 18,600 cubic meter capacity Mark III membrane bunker tank, a real world first. The CMA Jacques Sade, which has now been laden with the largest intake of boxes ever in history, is now heading west. So that's an example, just one recent example of how China continues to be a key factor in shipping. Will China keep driving shipping markets? We read this week that Chinese coal importers are being discouraged from importing Australian coal. And last week I heard on the radio it said that while issues related to countries like Russia might affect the political weather, China is changing the geopolitical climate. So if I'm stating the obvious, what is the big picture now for ship owners? Can I start with you, Athanasios? What worries you most and what are you optimistic about at the moment in the context of that landscape that we're facing today?
First of all, I wish to thank Nicholas Bornozis for his kind invitation to join this interesting panel, which is also food for thought for all of us, except the pleasure of our participation in the very good company of you and my old friend John Hadjipateras. It's very pleasant to see John because I haven't seen him for some time. and we were together at school and also in London. We had the chance to see each other more. So that's a very good aspect of this function of today. Now, some of the things my short analysis here is well-known, the summary of well-known facts of recent times. Globalization of trade and the world economy benefited China mostly. And this, of course, has ensured in the tremendous growth of the Chinese economy between 2003 and 2008. Remember the very good times for shipping. We in the shipping business enjoyed a booming freight market for tankers and bulk carriers alike. That was a once-in-a-lifetime experience for a shipowner of my age. Maybe some of my younger colleagues will be able to enjoy another time this kind of booming times, but I'm 50 years in shipping, and that was the best ever period by far. Then came the credit crisis in 2008, affecting the US and the European economies. It was evident that the manufacturing jobs had now shifted to China and East Asia, creating large-scale unemployment in the West. In our decade, after 2010, let's say, voters in Western countries, disillusioned with their politicians, started voting populist leaders, to mention the UK, Italy, and USA, among others. There has been a trend in the West for their populist governments to adopt protectionist policies to allegedly protect manufacturing jobs. In shipping, in 2017, after a long crisis, things were looking up. We were experiencing improved freight rates, especially in dry bulk. The world economies were growing in tandem, you know. Both the US and the China economy was growing, and also Europe was growing. The interest rates were ultra low, and the omens were very good for our industry. Then, suddenly in 2018, President Trump put tariffs to Chinese import goods, with China retaliating, imposing tariffs on US imports. This created havoc and uncertainty in world trade. The growth of world trade stagnated, although these US protective policies little affected the Chinese economic growth. Since then, the various changes, for worse or for better, in US-China relationships have created an unwanted volatility in our industry. President Trump was trying to protect US manufacturing jobs, but there is no doubt that his protectionist policies have not increased employment in the US in the so-called Rust Belt states. These protectionist policies of Western governments are short-sighted. I believe globalization trends will prevail as normal, and the West should find other ways to compete with China. Greek shipping, I should say European shipping, is a good example of an industry where we, the West, are competitive. For the last tumultuous, let's say, 20 years, Greek shipping has been growing and has been serving well the US, Europe, and China alike. So this is my introduction, if you want, about the geopolitical picture of today. I don't know, maybe John can take over. And...
Yeah, Athanasios, thank you very much. Over to you, John.
Yeah, thank you, Nicholas Bornozis. Thank you, Nick, for the introduction. I'm honored to be on your panel, and I'm delighted to be, and honored to be sharing it with a titan of a friend, Athanasios. I echo what Athanasios said. Basically, the timeline has brought us to a situation where I think there's a very material change happening which has been accelerated by these policies of the trade war. And the material change, I think, in China is basically that it's accelerating its transformation into a consuming economy from a producing economy. So this perhaps in the short term results in less world trade, but I think ultimately that China will again be, it will continue to be the driving force for shipping and world trade. It was the producer of the world's goods, and to a large extent still is, and the biggest importer of raw materials, exporter of finished goods. It's changing now, and I think that China will become a big consuming country. Its economy at some point will overtake the U.S. economy, become the biggest, but it will continue to drive world trade, and both regionally and internationally. And there'll be a place for Greek shipping so long as Greek shipping can continue to keep its competitive and its entrepreneurial spirit and commitment, which has done so quite resiliently now for a few thousand years. So hopefully that, this is where I think I would sort of focus for the future. For the more immediate consequences of what's happening, I think it's very difficult to make a prediction, because we have an election coming, you know, who knows? Who knows? But it doesn't affect the future. The medium and long term is the same story. The geopolitics, I think, is solid. I mean, we have prospects for development in Southeast Asia improving, in Africa, and as I said, China continuing to establish itself as a dominant sort of, if not the dominant economy in the world.
Okay, well, thank you both very much for that. And John, that's a very optimistic tone now. Can we move on to the energy transition as perhaps the biggest geopolitical issue we face now in the shipping industry? Clarkson's last week was telling me in its Shipping Intelligence Weekly that the industry currently produces about 800 million tons of CO2. Well, it will be expected to produce 800 million tons this year, something like 2.3% of global emissions. And of course, we know shipping remains the most CO2 efficient mode of moving raw materials and goods, 3 times more than rail, 9 times than truck. And we have reduced emissions by 20% since 2008. The prospect now, though, and that improvement has been based on partly slower speeds and partly by new eco ships, but further radical reductions are being demanded. And this is presenting significant challenges for stakeholders. A previous panel was, looking at this from a ship owner perspective. Do you think, there's any evidence that shipping is decreasing its carbon intensity slower than other transport modes? I can still buy a diesel car in theory, whether I want to or not is another matter. Should I be able to, should people be able to buy diesel ships still? Yesterday in London, there were significant demonstrations outside the IMO and leading shipping related embassies demanding that shipping cleans up its mess. Is perhaps, part of the problem for shipping that it's not incapable of change, or it's not changing, and it's not that it's not going to change, but it's maybe poorly understood and poorly targeted and unfairly targeted as an irresponsible polluter. And do you think from a global economic and political perspective, that affects shipping? There's no doubt the energy transition will have a profound implication for our industry. How do you think we should be preparing as an industry for a more sustainable future. Perhaps John, you might want to go first.
Sure.
Sorry, there's a lot packed in there.
Yeah. Well, first of all, in terms of the industry being slow or ineffective, I don't know for a fact, but I imagine there's no other industry that has made as dramatic a change in its profile of SOx as the shipping industry did this year. I mean, to go from a 3.5% to fuel to sulfur content to 0.5, whether it was right or not, or how it happened, you can question, etc. But the fact is that is a huge move by the whole industry, taken by through an industry body, and has been perfectly successful so far. I mean, a lot of complaints, but it happened. So I think that initiative shipping should be congratulated and not criticized for being too slow. It's ludicrous to call it with that sort of thing having taken place. So but that's happened, and now we're looking forward. And the percentage of emissions that you quoted is, of course, while the planes are flying. Right now, I imagine that would be quite a bit higher because there's so much less air traffic as a percentage. But it's a freight train coming, the climate change discussion and obviously the moves to go to a carbon neutral and a carbon free sort of environment, and it's inevitable. So I think the sooner everybody embraces it and starts to sort of contribute to how we manage that, the better. So I think that we shouldn't let, as Greeks, my feeling is that we shouldn't let other areas and countries take the initiative and run with this ball without the input that we could have, which should be very valuable. But that means we have to be on board and accept that the change will happen. So as it happens today, there was an announcement that the first LPG fueled ship started its sea trials. She would belong to our main competitor, BW Shipping, and it was a retrofit, and so they opted to retrofit instead of building, and they have a program to do more. So it's one of the ways in which we can see significant reductions is for that. But of course, there's a LNG as fuel. For us, being carriers of LPG, LPG makes sense, and I think it does for other situations as well. So there's that, it's also encouraging to see charterers are in the game. I mean, they've taken the initiative to measure the emissions of their own activity when it comes to shipping. And I think that it's important to have them on board and participating in this, because hopefully, for once, they will make a bigger contribution, and the whole weight of it all won't fall on the ship owners' shoulders. But this is what I'd like to say.
Thanks, John. Yes, I mean, you mentioned there the Sea Cargo Charter, I think, joining the banks with their Poseidon Principles initiatives, looking to measure emissions from shipping. Athanasios, can you share your perspective on this energy transition challenge?
I will make the point when we had our private discussions that I think the shipping is by far the least pollutant transportation industry. I think in your statistic here, shipping is responsible for 2.5% of pollution of exhaust gas in the world, versus 17.5% for trucks and trains, for example. Coincidentally, their fuel is gas oil. And then aviation is heavily polluting the air over cities with due to the frequent air traveling. You know, there are planes, for example, in Heathrow Airport, landing every half a minute or every 1 minute. Of course, this has reduced, as John said, because of the present problems concerning aviation, but certainly is a heavy pollutant over cities and over land. In our case, shipping, very little pollution happens in port. Most of the 2.5% pollution happens in the ocean, in the open air. So it's more dispersed. I think we have discussed, as John pointed out, the very big progress made by shipping, although it's the least regulated of transportation industries, by adopting the 0.5% sulfur content fuel, by devising very economical engines where we probably halved over the last 30 years fuel consumption of ships. It's half. Design, which is the important point. I think the IMO policies with respect to fuel propulsion, the recent policies, in my opinion, were wrong. Maybe this was not the IMO problem, but maybe because of the pressure of national governments and oil companies insisting on keeping the cost down or disposing of the heavy fuel, which is there was in IMO a compromise adopting low sulfur fuel oil of 0.5%, which is still heavy, still polluting, and open scrubber fitted vessels. In my opinion, a very clean measure would have been for all ships to burn gas oil, same as trains and heavy trucks at land. And this would reduce shipping pollution to, and I suppose that depending on the market conditions, the extra cost would be passed on to the consumers, on to the charterer. After all, society and the world want cleaner seas and cleaner air, they should pay for that. For the time being now, there were these decisions, and let's live with our present options for ships to burn LSFO, which is a measure in the half measure in the right direction. And for course, for our colleagues who fitted scrubbers, they must have time to pay off their investments. So, because it would be unfair to adopt gas oil in 2 or 3 years, and you know this investment to go. Now for LNG, which is the new clean fuel, I suppose it's more suitable for gas carriers.
Athanasios, sorry to interrupt you. Can you speak a bit louder?
Yeah.
Can you speak a bit louder, please?
Okay. Generally, LNG as fuel is suitable for gas carriers, containers, and passenger ships. Not so for tankers and bulkers with no regular port schedule. There's a lot of talk about hydrogen being the ship's fuel in the future when it becomes an economical option, maybe after 2050. So that is the points about the cleaner fuels and how we can reduce the pollution at sea.
Thank you, Athanasios. I mean, you know, I completely agree with your point on where LNG is at the moment. And of course, it would be ironical if we see lots of LNG-fueled oil tankers, moving around the world. But that does seem to be, the main available source of fuel. And with bunkering capacity growing, do you think that the Greek market, could start investing significantly in LNG fueled bulkers, for example, because it's really the only available option now? And I think there's quite a wide body of experts that feel it's the option that will see us through to 2030 and maybe 2040 in terms of the IMO CO2 reduction targets. Clearly, there's not much ordering going on at the moment, partly due to regulatory uncertainty as well as the market. But can you see the global bulker and tanker community perhaps changing, their mind on LNG and investing heavily in the near future?
For bulkers and tankers who are tramp ships, which are tramp ships and have a varied trade, I think it's very difficult to have LNG bunkering facilities in all the ports where we bunker. It's a very expensive exercise, and I don't know how easy it is, and it must be very costly, especially now that we see that the price of oil for the future may be a bit cheaper. I mean, crude oil or fuel oil today is the cheapest fuel to run ships. And for LNG, I think the biggest cost is having bunkering terminals. I do not see that Greek owners will order not even Kamsarmax ships, which will be fueled with LNG. As I said, it's more suitable for LNG vessels who can burn from the cargo, for passenger ships definitely, who have a regular schedule of ports, and for ro-ro ships and containers, again, who run between the regular ports. But not for tramp ships, where of course, I don't know, for VLCCs, we usually bunkering in Singapore and Fujairah. Okay, you can have bunker facilities for LNG in these two ports, and that should cover VLCCs. But for Supramaxes and bulk carriers running between I don't know, Argentina and the Middle East or whatever, I do not see this as a possibility for the next 20 years at least.
Yeah, so that's certainly the track record so far. As you say, it's ferries and container ships that are mainly switching to LNG as fuel to date. What about new ships of the future? Do either of you think that we're soon going to have an interest in a market for ships that carry ammonia or hydrogen gas ships? I saw GTT was in the news for acquiring a hydrogen-related company. I mean, presumably that's still going to be some way off. But do you see new trades emerging at all in the shipping sector?
Well, I think they're coming, but I don't know what they are right now. And LNG, apart from the fact that it like Athanasios said, it's for a tramp operation, you need an infrastructure which is not envisaged. But apart from that, is also stopgap. You said it might take us to 2030, 2040. Well, if you build a ship today, it'll be 5 years old in 2030. By the time by the time you order, take delivery, etc. So it appears to be not a solution anyway from a point of view of getting to zero, so-called. So those solutions are yet to be found, right? I mean, and even the talk of hydrogen. Hydrogen, of course, is perfectly the perfect fuel, but to produce it is not clean. So at the moment, so people are talking about green hydrogen. Can you get green hydrogen? There's still technology that has to evolve and is in nascent form, I think now, but we should follow a lot of these. And I was going to say in our concluding remarks that I think that for the future, people have these opportunities to kind of follow some of these trends in different directions and achieve the carbon objectives together with growth in activity, yeah, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that seems to be one of the themes in the discussion around sustainability is, can we be sustainable and grow? Yeah. And I guess time's going to tell, but I take it that you firmly believe that growth can still be part of a more sustainable society.
I believe that very firmly, yes.
Yeah.
I think that the growth is that a sustainable society, actually, if you're looking forward a bit, is only it's mutually they're mutually inclusive. You have to have sustainability to have long-term growth, and vice versa.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Should we move on to digital issues and diversity and inclusion? I know, John, particularly you wanted to talk about the 50% of the population that have been so far not used effectively enough by the shipping industry, that is women. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, you said it.
Yeah.
You said it.
Sorry.
And yeah, no, it's good. I mean, that's my thesis is that but I don't really have the answers in our firm. We are trying to focus on creating opportunities for women and for to work on ships. I think shoreside, our industry is in terms of in numbers is quite good in terms of offering equal opportunity. But perhaps in terms of promotion, etc., we still need work to do. In fact, probably we need a lot of work to do to get more women at a higher levels. But at sea, it's I think because with the change of working conditions, with the shortening of the contracts, with that the opportunity there aren't jobs at sea now that can be done by men and not women. So it's silly for ship owners to overlook a labor force like that. As far as so I think that we need some positive we cannot be passive to let this thing happen, and people have to take an initiative and push it. As far as the other thing you mentioned, digitalization and all that, I mean, that provides huge opportunities, I think, for assisting in our efficiency and hence, bottom line, the profitability. And the profitability in this case is aligned totally with emissions. as you reduce emissions, as you increase your efficiency, you reduce your consumption, you also reduce your so the biggest areas where I see digitalization now helping in that respect are in optimization, in terms of voyage planning, hull cleaning, propeller polishing, all these things that basically make your voyage more efficient, in terms of cargo operation, trim, all this data we are able to collect now directly from the ships and store and calculate and manipulate, if the trend is to analyze it in a way which is useful and will I believe help the bottom line and help the environment at the same time. We discussed the other day when the three of us were talking also about predictive and preventive maintenance, and engine performance and all these things. I think are major developments and positive developments.
Okay, thank you. Thanasi, can I bring you in? Digitalization and diversity.
Digitalization has proven its value for shipping over the last 30 years. In shipbuilding, where ship design have become more lean and more economical. In ships handling and safer ships handling and navigation, where we now have safer ships due to sophisticated navigational equipment. Ships management is now to a great extent digitalized. Practically all departments. In technical, we have a plant maintenance system and the system monitoring ships from a distance, accounting and all this. In fact, a theoretical, if you want a theoretical example, would be that one could manage a ship from on board. I mean, one's crew, if expert enough, could order necessary spares and supplies and stores, organize dry dockings, and so on. Also, maybe another idea is if there are problems from where you can operate your ship and have a ship's management office, you could have it offshore on a ship, so in no man's land, so to speak, you can run your ships from offshore. So from an old passenger ship or whatever. And of course, people will have to move to land from somewhere. Anyway, I think we have seen that there was big progress in all this. Now, for the question of employing ladies on ship, our experience is that there's not so much supply of lady officers because it's not a very suitable job for ladies who are planning to raise a family, children. And there are, I suppose, there are enough men to man ships, and there are enough jobs for ladies who have to run a family at the same time. We have been making exceptions now in employing some lady cadets. One, because we had, because of the Greek unemployment problem during the last 10 years, we employed more Greek cadets on the ships, more than necessary. And we had some lady candidates who were very keen to sail, to go on board ships, either for reasons, they had to earn a livelihood, or some of them had a genuine love for the sea. We also have initiated in the office, we are training some lady superintendents, which is again a new thing because usually again most superintendents' job, because of the traveling, extensive traveling required, mostly are men. So we see some Greek ladies who want to, and some of them are quite good as well. But generally speaking, for tramp ships, I would say that it's not a job for ladies. I mean, they could work on passenger ships, perhaps cruise ships, but especially passenger ships with a regular sailing into and out of port near to their families.
Well, Thank you for that. I know certainly I have experience of plenty of powerful women in Greek shipping, not least Payet Paleologu, who runs our operation in the Hellenic and Black Sea area out of Greece. I think she, cut her teeth as a superintendent and, managed extensive steel renewals in Chinese shipyards. And it's good to see there are increasing numbers of female colleagues, certainly, in my workplace, and the direction of travel, seems to be good in the industry. So let's hope we continue to make the most of that 50% of the world's population who have so far been underutilized by shipping, perhaps. If we can move on, because we're nearly out of time, just finally, talking about Greek shipping at the forefront of global trade, which I think is one of the conference themes. How do you see the future opportunities and challenges for ship owners in Greece, for your sons and daughters, in the world of today and tomorrow? We've had a comment in from John Trifidis, Yasuyani out there. Greek shipping from the days of Ottoman rule through the Cold War has benefited from the neutrality of cross-trading and open registries, efficiently transporting foodstuff and energy between camps. Is this background of global trade flows undermined by politically motivated sanctions and unilateral regulation?
Ironically, in the past, these attempts to regulate or to inhibit free trade created opportunities for some people. Historically, the blockade of France made a lot of ship owners very rich, and so. But of course, in the long term, we need free passage to have free trade for countries like Greece, who are we're not serving our own country, and I don't think going forward that we can expect anything more turbulent or than we have in the past. I don't see the next few hundred years as being very different in terms of free trade and passage, etc.
Okay. Thank you, John. Thanasi, any thoughts on the future for Greek shipping?
Yes, as I said before, Greek shipping is serving the West. Regrettably, there are no longer big commercial fleets in much bigger countries like the USA, the United Kingdom, and Russia. Other national fleets, including the German fleet, has shrunk. The Greek commercial fleet is 50% of the European Union total fleet. I think the European umbrella, I hope, will be an advantage in the future for Greek shipping, although there may be some debate among colleagues about that who don't want the European Union interference, including the CO2 fines or whatever. However, apart from geopolitics, what makes me optimistic for the future is the know-how, the flexibility, and the adaptability of Greek ship owners. The long tradition of 3,000 years of history is an indication of the continuity of Greek commercial shipping for many years to come.
Well, I think that's a fantastic note to finish on, Athanasios. Thank you very, very much to both of you. It's been a pleasure and a sincere honor to be able to listen to you talk. We've got one final comment out from the floor that may help as well. Congratulations to you both. Esther Mitzi from Sea Pearls Yachting is so proud to have men like you in our industry. It's been a great pleasure to be with you today. So thank you very much. And thank you very much, Nicholas, for organizing this. I'll hand it back to you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Thanasi.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you.
Very good company and a very interesting discussion. And thank you very much for coordinating all this and for your very good questions. Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, all I want to say is a big thank you.
And congratulations on running a digital conference like this.
Yeah.
It's another example of adaptability.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. And really thank you to both for being with us, and of course to Nicholas. This has been a super discussion, and we could not end the first day on a better note. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicholas. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All the best to you.
All the best.
Bye, John.
Congratulations for organizing digital conferences in these difficult times.
You know, actually, as we have been discussing, we are not running webinars. We're running a real conference, and running a real conference, it's different. And thank you so much for being on board.
Thank you. All the best.
All right.
Be well. Bye.